I made over $82,000 of profit flipping my first ever property back in 2010. And since then, I've gone on to flip 67 more homes. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the fundamentals and things that you can do if you're a new investor to flip your first property. The first thing you want to do is you want to pick your area, because every area is going to have a different market value depending on if you're looking to flip a single family home, which is what we suggest because that has the highest resale value. And that's where your biggest pool of buyers are going to be, as opposed to say flipping a duplex or a triplex. So again, the first thing you want to do is what area do you want to be in? Now for me, in flipping over 60 houses since we started, that is super important, because it's not just about buying a good deal, because you could buy a good deal with good numbers in a rough area, but it doesn't mean that there's a lot of buyers there, right? You don't want to just buy a good deal. You want to buy what I call high demand area. So figuring that out, where's the average number of properties sitting and what's the average price of a home right now in the area that you're looking to buy. And so if you see the biggest pool of buyers, maybe 30 or 40% of buyers in your city are buying in a specific area, or more importantly, in a specific price range, we suggest looking in an area like that, because when you resell that property, you're going to have a faster chance or a higher chance of selling it quickly. And the next thing you want to do is, even before you start looking for a property, well, you need to know how you're going to fund the property. Now, are you going to buy this property with a private loan? Are you going to buy it with a hard money loan? Are you going to use your own savings where you put 20% down and the bank lends you the 80%? So again, you need to figure out these costs. Now, the lowest hanging fruit is obviously if you have 20% down and you go to the bank, you get pre-approved for, say, a 6-month or a 1-year term mortgage that's an open variable, meaning if you sell the property within 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, you don't have a penalty. Or you could raise the 20% down from somebody, from a private lender. Let's say you pay them 10% interest on the money, and then the bank lends you the rest, right? So again, there are a lot of options. And again, I'll link a video here where I explain the ins and outs of financing a flip and even rental properties. So that's the other thing, is how you're gonna buy the property, right? How are you gonna fund the property? Now, once you've figured out the finances, how you're going to fund the property, if you have the money right now, or if you need to go out and raise the money, and you've picked the area that you want to focus on, is the next thing is you want to start looking for a property. Now, there are various amount of ways that we have found deals over the years, including the MLS, including talking to realtors in our area, including talking to wholesalers, people that actually make a living from buying properties, putting them under contract, and then selling them to people like us that have capital, right? So there are many ways. You can go door knocking. You can ask your friends and family that you're looking for a property to get the word out there. You can go look on online classifieds like Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace and start looking and scouring the online space for looking for a deal. So again, there are many ways to do that. Now, let's say you find a property and you feel that it has potential. The next step is, even before you go see that property, or whether you go and see it through your realtor or a wholesaler, or you contact the owner yourself because maybe they called you through your direct advertising or some sort of marketing, you want to talk to a trusted realtor that you know, and you want to pull comparables. So you want to know that if a property, they're asking $200,000 and you feel that the ARV, or what we call the after repair value, could be a lot higher, let's say 300 or 400 grand, well, you want to first check if there's actually evidence of that property or a property like that in that area selling for more. And what we've done is, I will go to a realtor and say, I'm looking at this property, they're asking $200,000. The owner has told me that the home requires renovations, and I just want to get an idea of what I could possibly sell this home for if we were to buy it, renovate it, and sell it. Now, a quick rule of thumb is I use a quick formula that you guys can use. And again, this is just as a guideline. You should never use this to actually buy the property. I usually look at all of the flips that I've done. And what I have found is, any property that I bought on average at 60 cents on the dollar or less, I made a profit. So I'll give you simple terms. If the after repair value or the comparables in the home or in the comparables in the area are selling for, so let's say $300,000. Well, you would take $300,000, multiply that by 0.60. That's going to give you $180,000, right? So what that tells me is I should not pay more than $180,000 for this property. Now that's a quick formula that has served me well. And again, you shouldn't use that to qualify every deal. Just use that as a quick analysis to figure out if you should spend more time on that property, if you should bring your contractor there, if you should even go there in person. So again, let's say you got the comparables, they look strong based on the purchase price or the sale price that the owner wants. The next thing you want to do is you want to bring a contractor there, a trusted contractor. You can go there yourself if you are confident with running your numbers. But if you're new, we suggest bringing at least 2 contractors there. You don't want to go with the first one. Better yet, if you could do 3, that's even better, especially if you're new, because you want to have an idea of what that property could sell for or what that property could be renovated for. You need to know that number because that's going to help you determine if there's actually margin where you can make money in this deal. You go to the property, you get a contractor quote, you do what we call a scope of work where you're basically letting the contractor know these are the things that I want to do to the property. Maybe you get their suggestions. Maybe it's changing the kitchen cabinets, it's changing the backsplash, it's changing the flooring, painting the home, putting in new eaves troughs, putting in a roof. Whatever the list is, you need to know that. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is when you are coming up with this list or what we call a scope of work with your contractor, well, you want to look at, well, what are other properties in the area? What have they done? What are the updates on those properties? And you want to renovate. You don't want to over renovate. You don't want to under renovate. You want to renovate it where you're comparing apples to apples. So if a subject property, or let's say the average amount of properties in that area, they have marble or they have quartz countertops, or let's just say they have, they don't even have quartz or laminate. They're just fixed average, right? Like they don't look like they're over renovated or anything like that. Well, guess what? If there are evidence of that, well, then you want to renovate your property to that standard. You don't want to over renovate it. And again, we've done properties in the past where we over renovated it, but we never actually got that money back. We didn't get a return on our investment. It's not always like $1 in, $2 out. So you got to keep that in mind when you are looking and you're coming up with a estimate of renovations to help your contractor give you a average or give you an estimation of what the property is going to cost. So once you have that number, let's say labor, material, it's going to cost you $40,000 or $50,000. You need to factor that in. You need to factor in the purchase price, and you need to factor in what we call the closing costs, right? If you're buying a property, there's going to be some costs to actually buy the property, like depending where you live, land transfer tax, which is a tax imposed by most states or provinces to actually buy that property and transfer the title from that seller to your name. You're also going to have soft costs like utilities, right? If you're buying that property and you're holding it over 3 or 4 months, now, especially if it's over the winter months, depending where you live, you're going to have more costs in hydro and heat. These things need to be factored in when you're coming up with those numbers. The other thing is you need to factor in your financing costs, right? Whether you're getting a mortgage from the bank, whether you're using your own money and you're borrowing it from a line of credit or a HELOC, or you're borrowing it from a private lender or a hard money lender, you need to factor all of these costs in and again, come up with what what you need to be into that property for. Let's say in our example, the owner is asking for $200,000. You know that you could sell this property for $400,000, that's a good deal. And the renovator or the contractor says, it's going to cost you about $55,000 to renovate this home. Well, you already know, even with the purchase price and the contractor quote, you're into this property for $255,000. And you want to add, let's say, another 10% for closing costs, carrying costs, financing costs. So that's going to help you determine if you're into this property for like $255,000, and let's say you add another $270,000 and the after repair value is $400,000. Well, that's a good deal, because if you pay 4% to a realtor to sell this home, right? You have $400,000, that's the sale price. You multiply that by 0.96. And why I say that is because 0.96, what you're doing is you're taking off 4% off that after repair value, after that sale price, where the commission needs to be paid to a realtor. And that's going to net you a certain amount, right? So you take that number. Once you pay off your $255,000 for the purchase price that you spent, plus the contractor quote, and let's say you add another $10,000 or $15,000 for financing, your land transfer tax, your utility costs. If you're happy with that number, let's say it's 50 or 60 grand in your pocket, well then guess what? Move forward with that deal. If you have those numbers, you can be confident that that property is gonna make you money. What you don't wanna do is where the numbers are super tight and you look at it and you're barely squeezing out $20,000. And trust me, we've done deals where we just wanted to do a deal and we ended up buying a property and we got burned because, again, our margin for profit, it wasn't high enough, right? We did deals that we were happy making $15,000 or $20,000. But again, if there's a sudden change in your contractor quote or a surprise comes up, and trust me, they do, or let's say the market shifts between the time you bought the property in terms to the time you sold the property, well, that 20 grand of profit, that can erode very, very fast. So what I've learned from doing so many flips over the last 10 years is you want to buy properties that have a higher margin. My mentor once told me that, Manjit, you make money in real estate on the buy, meaning the lower you buy that property, the higher chance you have of making a profit for yourself and your lenders who are giving you money. So keep that in mind. If a deal seems a little bit too tight, it probably is. Walk away. There's going to be another one, right? You're in this business, especially if you're doing your first flip, you don't want to be out of the business even before you start, right? And I've seen far too many novice investors or new investors where they bought a deal, they didn't run the numbers correctly. They estimated the after repair value or the comparables way too high and they weren't, and they got burned. They lost $10,000, $20,000. And again, you don't want that to happen to you, especially if you want to make this into a business, even if you're doing it on a part-time basis. That's my best advice for you to get into real estate, to flip your first property as a beginner. And again, remember, deals are like a bus. If one comes around, you don't feel that it's good based on the purchase price that the owner is asking, the seller's asking, the comparables, the also contractor quote, it probably isn't. Walk away, wait for another deal. And what you're going to do is you're going to get good at, during this time, you're going to get good at qualifying properties, running numbers, looking at comparables, talking to contractors, coming up with estimations or what we call a scope of work where the contractor is helping you figure out these numbers. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you really like this one, I'm going to link up another one here where I break down a real life flip that we did, including all the numbers that we did for financing, for purchase, and renos, and what we walked away with on that deal. So feel free to check out that video. We'll see you guys all in the next one.